My superpower is engineering. I've been a roboticist almost all my life now. I think engineering is just as creative as the arts. Engineers, we solve problems. It impacts the world. It makes a difference. Without IEEE, I don't think I would have the network that I have. Anyone can get involved with IEEE USA at any time. There's an immense amount of value for anyone at any career stage.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to today's IEEE USA Livestream webinar, How to Solve the Problem of Innovation in Hybrid and Remote Work. I'm your host, Jonathan Cho. IEEE USA's goal is to create programming that is valuable, relevant, and of interest to you. As such, we will be sending a short survey to all registrants after this event and would love your feedback. We value your opinions and would appreciate it if you could take a few minutes and share your thoughts. Joining us today is Dr. Gleb Sapersky. Dr. Gleb helps tech and finance industry executives drive collaboration, innovation, and retention in hybrid work. He serves as the CEO of the boutique Future of Work consultancy, Disaster Avoidance Experts, and is the best-selling author of 7 books, including the global bestsellers Never Go With Your Gut, How Pioneering Leaders Make the Best Decisions and Avoid Business Disasters, and The Blind Spots Between Us, How to Overcome Unconscious Cognitive Bias and Build Better Relationships. His cutting-edge thought leadership was featured in over 650 articles and 550 interviews in Harvard Business Review, Fortune, USA Today, Incorporated Magazine, CBS News, Time, Business Insider, and elsewhere. Without further ado, I will now pass it off to our presenter. Welcome, Dr. Gleb. We're excited for what you have for our audience today.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Jonathan. All right, let's talk about how to solve the problem of innovation in hybrid and remote work. One thing I want to mention before starting up is that you can get the resources from this presentation by going to tinyurl.com/DAE event. DAE event. It's going to be under me right now on the screen. So it's going to be a copy of my newest book, Leading Hybrid and Remote Teams, on this topic. All right, let's talk about innovation. The shape of the presentation, just so you can know what to anticipate, is to focus first on traditional innovation and some of the challenges with it, especially as applied to hybrid work, remote work. You as IEEE members, IEEE members, you've probably had some significant challenges doing innovation in hybrid and remote settings, which is why you want to check this out. And I'll talk about how to address this. And I worked a lot in education settings with tech organizations to help them address these sorts of problems. For example, one of my recent clients with whom I just wrapped up an engagement is the Information Sciences Institute at the University of Southern California. And they allowed me to talk about them and my work with them because they had a good experience. They gave me a testimonial. So I know very well what IEEE members need. And this is a technique that will really help you improve innovation, in whether you're working remotely, hybrid, and so on. So let's talk about the struggle with innovation in hybrid and remote work. We see that at largest companies, Apple, Google, and other companies, and of course, universities also call for a return to the office because of the challenge of innovation. Apple, Google, information sciences department get ahead because of innovation. And if they can't do innovation effectively, they will say, well, we need to do whatever we need to pursue innovation, including going back to the office, because they find it hard to do innovation in remote contexts. And brainstorming, of course, is the main traditional innovation technique. You know this very well. Whether you brainstorm just in a group, you get together, you share ideas, or you have a whiteboard, you write ideas out. This traditional brainstorming works pretty poorly in remote settings. It's hard to get effective engagement, that back and forth, writing on the whiteboard in Zoom or whatever platform you use, Microsoft Teams. And the thing that people don't really think about, not nearly sufficiently, is that you need to change the design of the innovation process. Google, Apple, large universities, they don't actually think about the meta question, meaning how do you actually do innovation? They just stick to the traditional methods. And that's a problem because they're using traditional design in new contexts of hybrid and remote work. So we need to adapt, use human-centered design that's centered around hybrid and remote work to have the best UX, user experience, fit for innovation in hybrid and remote settings. We know that tech talent of all sorts prefer working mostly or fully remotely. There's very clear surveys showing that something like only 14% of tech talent wants to work full-time in the office. Something like 40% want to work full-time remotely. So the largest chunk want to work on a hybrid schedule, less than half time in the office. And those who accommodate talent, we know this, will win. They will win. So let's talk about how to win. How to get the most innovation from your people. Maximize flexibility. We have extensive research showing that flexibility, autonomy are what drive innovation. So you have randomized control trials, lots of research, very clearly showing that more autonomy and more flexibility, which are of course intertwined, that's what gives you innovation. So think about 3 A's: excellence from anywhere, excellence at any time, and excellence from anyone. So those are the 3 A's that I want you to be thinking about. To democratize innovation and get excellence from anyone, including your junior people and neurodiverse contributors. We'll talk about what I mean a little bit later in the presentation. So, the second part, you want to think about separation of labor. Don't try to do all the innovation together. There are 3 key elements in innovation: idea generation, idea evaluation, and idea convergence. Those are the 3 key elements. Traditionally, they were done together in a brainstorming meeting, which is not really as efficient or effective, meaning doesn't take the least resources and is not as impactful. So there's a lack of specialization, and you can't really focus on each individual component of idea generation, evaluation, and convergence. So the traditional approach to brainstorming, it was, of course, group brainstorming. And there are lots of benefits of it. One is synergy, where when you have an idea that's inspired by someone else, so another team member, another group member said something, and you're like, oh, that makes me think of something else. That's great. Another is social facilitation. We are social beings, tribal beings, and we are motivated by working with each other, knowing that other people are working on the same task as we are. And this group brainstorming creates alignment. It creates buy-in, investment from fellow participants, because you were in the room. You were in the room where it happened, as Hamilton, the musical, says, right? So traditional brainstorming, however, has a number of problems, which were already known in the 70s and 80s, like production blocking. What's that about? So it's when someone has an idea, but other people are talking about a different idea, taking it in a different direction. And so the idea generator, depending on their personality, their status in the group, they may feel reluctant to interrupt and share their idea. Especially problematic for junior team members. You don't want to interrupt someone senior, right, in the room. There's a lack of psychological safety. So that undermines the democratization, ideas from anyone. And that undermines fresh, new perspectives, because, of course, junior people are likely to have fresh perspective, whereas senior people are less likely to have a fresh perspective. They're specialists, that's great, but they're likely to not have an out-of-the-box idea. And it also hurts introverts, because they find it hard to themselves think in this group brainstorming setting. depends on how introverted you are, and especially reluctant to interrupt others. It feels uncomfortable. They feel overwhelmed. So that's a problem. So it undermines neurodiversity in that regard. Then evaluation apprehension. It's another problem. What it refers to is people who are worried about judgment from others because of out-of-the-box ideas, too out of the box, too crazy, harming relationships with others if you are giving an idea that implicitly criticizes them. That's a problem. So it's especially problematic for people who are junior. So again, we talked about the junior team members' low status. So they are reluctant to contradict, criticize people who are on the team and have higher status, and people who are pessimistic. So people who want to get their ideas perfect before sharing them. This is especially common for people who are more concerned over other people's opinions. And from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, it tends to be more common for women on average. So this undermines neurodiversity, undermines inclusion. Another problem is called social loafing. That's about the fact that the more people there are in an actual brainstorming session, the harder it is, the harder it is to come up with more ideas per person, because our mind is lazy. It has heuristics, shortcuts. So we take those heuristics, those shortcuts, and we don't generate as much novel ideas, as many novel ideas per person. So fewer ideas per person. In fact, the best group size to generate the most ideas per person is 2. And finally, lack of flexibility. That's a serious problem because there's no anytime, anywhere, anyone. Traditionally, this is done in person. So we can't get participants who are geographically distributed, and of course, with cross-disciplinary collaboration among IEEE members, among different universities, even different departments in different buildings. It can be hard, but different universities, different centers, people are geographically dispersed. And of course, some people are working remotely. And it can accommodate only a limited number of people. You can't really do more than 10 for traditional brainstorming. So it has to be at the same time, which of course is limiting, instead of when people come up with new ideas and when they feel the energy to do brainstorming. So those are a lot of problems. Let's talk about solving them. There's an alternative to traditional brainstorming. It's called asynchronous brainstorming. So there was an early version of it developed in the early 1990s, way before remote work was even an idea, could be thought about. So it was a long time ago when people developed this technique. It was developed to address problems with traditional brainstorming, of the 4 problems I discussed before. So a long time ago, no ideas about hybrid and remote work. So this is something that was done to improve user experience, actually human-centered design for innovation. So it maximizes flexibility, democratized innovation, and separated and specialized all of those different components of innovation that we discussed. So this is quite useful technique that I then took and adapted for remote settings, for hybrid and remote settings. So let's talk about this. How do we do asynchronous brainstorming that's virtual for the future of work? I have a Harvard Business Review article about this that those who want to get can fill it out, the form at tinyurl.com/DAE event. So DAEE event. So Harvard Business Review article is an improved version of asynchronous brainstorming. It's basically adapted for hybrid and remote settings. It's great design and user experience, so really good for teams like that, and valuable for office-centric teams that are geographically distributed. So like I said, if you're an IEEE member, you might be collaborating with a team at a different university, or maybe with a department that's far away across campus that you don't want to bother going to, but realistically another university. That is very helpful. Or maybe you're collaborating within a company, some people within a company, or maybe you are within a company, who knows? Now, research shows that this really improves ideas, many more ideas overall, and more novel innovative ideas, as rated by external observers. And this is peer-reviewed research. Let's talk about it. There are 3 steps. Asynchronous brainstorm. First, idea generation. So the first step. The participants, everyone, generates ideas separately and asynchronously. So you're at home or whatever co-working space. You can even be in the office, your office, so on campus or somewhere else, or in a company if you work in a company. So separately and asynchronously, not at the same time, you input ideas into a digital collaboration tool. For example, you can use Google Forms. That's the simplest thing. We will try that out later in this presentation. It's very easy and simple. Or you can use something like Mural if you want to get that whiteboard design experience. So if you want to do more brainstorming that's visual, and some people in IEEE do a lot of that, you can use Mural or similar whiteboard software. Then you can make each person's input one of 3 options: fully known to everyone else, semi-anonymous, meaning the leader, the facilitator will know it, but no one else. Or you can make it known to no one if it's fully anonymous. I recommend doing that when you're dealing with things that might have career challenges, negative critical impact on other people. So that's when you want to make it fully anonymous contributions. But otherwise, make it semi-anonymous or fully known. So you're taking advantage of social facilitation in the first 2, when you're fully known or semi-anonymous, because the leader knows your contribution in the semi-anonymous, and everyone knows your contributions in the fully known. So that is good. You know that others on your team are doing the same thing. That's useful. Next, idea evaluation. So all team members, you rate each other's ideas, how good they are. So let's say you use Google Forms. You rate them in a spreadsheet. For example, on novelty, practicality, and strategic fit, whatever other categories might be relevant for you. You can also comment on each idea as part of that. In most cases, I strongly recommend you do this anonymously, and digital tools like Google Forms and spreadsheets can facilitate anonymity. So can Mural. So for example, you use Google Forms, you get a spreadsheet. So let's say you have 10 people participating. You get something like 40 ideas. Then you give a spreadsheet. So the facilitator will clean it up, remove duplicates. You get 35 ideas. You give a copy of that spreadsheet to all of the 10 team members, and you have them rate each idea, let's say on 1 to 10 scale, on novelty, practicality, and strategic fit. So now you have each of these ideas are rated 1 through 10. So each idea has 30 points from each people, and you went from 3 to 30 points. And then you have 10 people. So you have each idea has anywhere from 30 to 300 of these 35 ideas that are there. And then naturally, the best ideas, of course, float to the top. You can say, well, we don't want to consider any idea that has less than 270 or 250, whatever you want. And you can also comment on each idea, so you can see individual comments. And so then you take those ideas that floated to the top and you get them into convergence. Before that, you can do another round of brainstorming. So everyone has seen and rated each other's ideas. And if this is important, let's say you're applying for a $10 million grant or something like that, or you're launching a major new product, you may want to do this again. So do this again for more important issues. You tap the synergy of being inspired by other people. We remember that synergy, that's quite useful. So you might want to do this for blue sky generation of strategic ideas, whatever you want to do. Now, in most cases, when it's not as major a thing, you would move straight away to step 3, which is convergence. Now you've seen the best ideas, all the ones that got 270 or above, or 250 and above. You hold meeting, facilitate with a facilitator, or a leader. to implement these ideas. In person, I recommend doing it for hybrid or office-centric teams, or virtually for geographically distributed teams, remote teams. Avoid doing the other steps in person. You want to be separate from each other for the first two steps. So the idea generation, step one, and idea evaluation, step two. Because that way you'll avoid the problems of production blocking, evaluation apprehension, and social loafing. It addresses a number of problems that we talked about. Lack of flexibility, because it can be done anytime. You can have a flexible preset period. During a virtual co-working session, if you want to do it in a quick period, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, you can do that. You can do something like 2 to 3 weeks if you want lots of ideas and if you think people need time to think about it. So when I was facilitating the application for a major grant, well, not the implementation. So they got the grant. It was many millions of dollars. And when we talked about how to organize the actual project strategic plan, we spent a few days on the idea generation stage for the virtually synchronous brainstorming activity. So it can be done from anywhere, of course. Home office, work office, traveling, you're on the plane, do this, great. And it addresses production blocking because you're not preventing people from participating. You democratize idea generation. Junior team members, for example, they can fully participate. They are not interrupting senior people, right? There's no production blocking for step one. And it helps neurodiversity because introverts can fully participate. They're not overwhelmed. They can hear themselves think. They can contribute their ideas fully. And it addresses evaluation apprehension because whether it's the anonymous version or semi-anonymous version, that provides psychological safety. So junior team members can share without worrying that they're going to be stepping on the toes of senior people, or that they're going to be expressing ideas that are too out of the box, too wacky. And it facilitates neurodiversity. Remember, pessimists can have the time to fully flesh out their ideas before sharing, and they don't have to worry about being too negative. They can be honest, transparent. So it helps ensure that everyone can participate. It addresses social loafing, of course, because all participants generate ideas by themselves. You can't rely on each other. And so that's especially helpful for large groups. For that implementation of the many millions of dollars grant, we had something like 30 participants from 5 universities on that. And that really what they were able to fully participate. So you get a lot of great and diverse ideas. Now, I want to share with you the experience of a company using this technique. So this is going to be a video of a testimonial that Susan Winchester left for me. This is from a Fortune 200 high-tech manufacturing company. So she's from a Fortune 200 high-tech manufacturing company called Applied Materials. So let's talk. So let me share the video and you'll check out what she has to say about this technique.
Hi, I'm Susan Winchester, and it's my delight and pleasure to tell you a little bit about our experience with Dr. Gleb. He had a big positive impact at Applied Materials. Our leaders and engineers love data-based, research-based insights, which is exactly what he brings. He hit it out of the park. And he used a team-led process, which was incredibly engaging. He introduced us to a concept he created called asynchronous brainstorming. It was a process that we used with hundreds and hundreds of leaders globally at the same time. We did this during our CEO kickoff session for our strategy work. And in a very short amount of time, we were able to get great benefits. I also love the work he's doing to educate leaders around the power and positive benefits of hybrid and virtual working. And one of his techniques that I'm planning to use, because I think it's so cool, is what he calls virtual co-working, where you and as many co-workers, colleagues as you'd like, create a virtual meeting and no purpose or agenda, but rather just to be working with one another. So I highly endorse Dr. Gleb's work. Love him.
Hi there, Dr. Gleb. It looks like hi there, Dr. Gleb. It looks like your audio might have cut off. Sorry, folks. 1 second. Hi there, Dr. Gleb.
Oh, there was an issue.
No worries.
Okay.
Your audio was cut off.
All right. So, Onorio Cantanacci brought in a question. How would you address the need for potential elaboration of ideas? If the ideas are submitted synchronously, how can one ask for elaboration of an idea? In the evaluation steps, step 2, you have an idea and you can leave notes on it. So not only rate it, but you can leave notes on it. And that's for major projects. I recommend doing a second step, because then you've seen each other's notes on the ideas, and then you can submit your elaborated idea in the second phase of doing idea generation. That's one option. The other option is to discuss it in the convergence meeting. So in the convergence meeting, of course, you have an opportunity for the ideas that rose to the top. You have an opportunity to discuss them, and you see all the notes that people left. So if it's an idea that rose to the top, if it got more than 250 points, then you discuss it. Okay. And again, you can put your questions in the comments section. I'll get to them either at the end or during breaks. All right, let's try an exercise together. And Jonathan will share a link to the exercise right now in the notes. So make sure to check out the notes, the comments. So brainstorming together asynchronously. We can do it right now. So the first thing is to think about, this will be step 1. We will not do evaluation, but you will get a copy of the spreadsheet that results from this for everyone to evaluate these ideas that people will share. So everyone will input their ideas on how you can use this technique in your own work. So using this technique in your own work, how can you do it? When you're an IEEE member, probably the ideas that other IEEE members have will help you. So you'll get the resulting spreadsheet for you to use in your own groups, and it will be a resource. We co-create this resource, and that's a unique type of thing that you can do with virtually synchronous brainstorming. You can choose to put in your name. You'll get credit for your idea. You'll get the visibility, but you don't have to. So you can share your ideas without sharing your name. It's one of the benefits of flexibility with virtually synchronous brainstorming. I've seen team members really appreciate it. Now, you want to put in each idea separately. Please put in as many ideas as you have, but one idea at a time, so they don't get messed up in the spreadsheet. That's going to be very helpful. So for each separate idea, input the information, then submit the form. Then go back to the form once more and submit your next idea. So this is the link to input ideas, tinyurl.com/IEEE innovation. So again, tinyurl.com/IEEE innovation. And as a reminder, to request resources, go to tinyurl.com/DAE event. DAE is the acronym for the company I lead called Disaster Avoidance Experts. So you want to get this resource, go to this link, tinyurl.com/DAE event. So let's take a look at the responses. So this is the form that everyone should see. Questions, where can you use this? Optional name, what is your idea? Let's take a look at the responses. So we have some people saying, design and manufacture a new widget to collect and report back industry-wide electrical industry reliability data. Great. Increase use of formal modeling methodologies. for anything not very time sensitive. Well, as we can see right now, we can do this technique actually quite quickly. So work with employees in other time zones, strategic planning, definitely, fix UX glitches, train software developers on effective code review techniques, brainstorm with team members across multiple time zones, great. So similar to this one, great. Identify and prioritize new product development, excellent. Planning for commercialization, great. Creating a virtual setup and can use this for sure, great. use it with your posse, excellent. Identifying solutions to handle today resource constraints, working with volunteers. So that's good for if you are an IEEE leader. Identifying and fleshing out project tasks, milestones, and so on. Let's see. So we have, again, you could see that people share their names and they get credit, of course, for their names, because this will be sent to all the attendees who want the resources. So make sure that you indicate that you want the resources. So developing ideas, process improvements for multiple shifts in a 24/7 operation. Regularly hold brainstorming, great stuff. New product idea generation, great. Find the one thing that can make the highest impact on a lean improvement. That's definitely a very good approach. So when you're thinking about something that will help you make sure that the best ideas float to the top, this is very helpful for that. Helping juniors feel recognized, definitely very helpful for that. Keeping track of research progress among collaborators, sharing comments, or most important action items. Yeah, that's great, because you can see what the team collaborators decide are the most important. Oh, recognize good failures. That's nice. That's neat. Oh, great. So somebody already used a Google form, so you can adapt this, elaborate for this virtually synchronous brainstorming. Suggesting debugging techniques on a bug. Great. By the way, you notice that we've been doing this for 3 minutes, and we've already gathered 35 ideas. So the more crazy ideas, the better. Great. And then you could see which ones float to the top. You can rate them by how innovative they are. If you want to use crazy or out of the box, whatever terminology works for you. Simplifying procedures. Excellent. If you present this way, you can have synergy in the virtual. Great. Yes, exactly. So we are doing co-working together, right? We're working together on a technique right now. You're all creating these ideas. This is wonderful. Maintain creativity and productivity as team members move to new locations, definitely. Feedback from customers, clients who don't know each other. Yes, so getting that ideas together. Improving organization memory, helping people remember what has failed and what has succeeded in the past. Definitely. So this is the kind of benefits it has. This is what you can do with it. And again, this is something that we took less than 5 minutes for, creating the key win themes in a proposal. Right, you can evaluate them, make sure that they float to the top. Okay, great. So again, if you want the resource, and you can keep putting in your ideas, if you want the resource, make sure to get to tinyurl.com/DAE event. Again, tinyurl.com/DAE event. Now, let's go on for the rest of the presentation. Traditional brainstorming versus asynchronous brainstorming. Traditional brainstorming, I have to be honest, it benefits from inertia, complacency. Apple, Google, honestly, large universities, they just do what they typically did. They know how to do innovation, and they try to shoehorn office-centric innovation into hybrid and remote work. That doesn't work well. Those who stick with it, I'm sorry, you'll face stagnation, irrelevance. Those who adopt asynchronous brainstorming will really be benefited. You'll see competitive advantage in the future of work. And one nice thing about brainstorming this way, asynchronous brainstorming, is you get this resource, right? You get the resource of 40 ideas, and maybe some of the ideas floated to the top right now, and you say, well, these are the best ideas, and we're going to implement 3 of them. but maybe some ideas are really good, but they're not the best right now. So I'm going to save them and save these ideas, which we already discussed, we have comments on, evaluations of, and we're going to revisit them in 3 to 6 months. So you have an idea bank, and that's very helpful. So it's a very helpful technique to have an idea bank that you can revisit. You don't have to do as much work next time, right? So how do you implement this? There are some problems with culture change. One of them is called functional fixedness. This is people resistant to change because they're used to using a traditional methodology. So based on my experience at client companies, client organizations, including universities, the various departments, teams of departments, that's a challenge. There's a cognitive bias. It's a dangerous judgment error called functional fixedness. It's kind of like the hammer nail syndrome. When you have a hammer, every thing looks like a nail. When we develop a specific way of functioning, we tend to apply that to all other formats, like pursuing innovation. We tend to become fixed. Even if other methods, design methods, this is a new design method, offer much better user experience or customer experience. But this is user experience. So this design method is truly human-centric for hybrid and remote settings. So that's what you want to be thinking about. This offers much better UX for hybrid and remote settings. I guarantee that. You address functional fixedness. How do you do so? You emphasize that traditional brainstorming, again, it benefits from inertia and complacency, leads to stagnation and irrelevance, which of course is a big no-no for university departments in information sciences, and for, of course, large companies, tech companies, startups that need to be innovative. So if you adopt asynchronous brainstorming, you'll see the competitive advantage. You'll get more ideas overall, more innovative and impactful ideas, and you'll have specialization of labor and focus. You'll democratize idea generation and empower neurodiverse participants. So that's very helpful. Another problem is called the empathy gap. So this is a cognitive bias where people just ignore the emotions of those who are not part of their in-group. So junior team members, pessimists, introverts, they should just suck it up. I heard that sentiment a number of times when I try to facilitate these sessions, integrate them into university departments, into large companies. So dismissing the value of democratizing idea generation, empowering people who are neurodiverse. So this shows an empathy gap, underestimating the importance of emotions who are, for people who are not like you. Really, emotions are what motivate us. You really want to be thinking about that. You want to motivate people, you need to get to their emotions. And you can't disempower them if you want to motivate them. If you want to motivate people to be creative, that is very difficult to do if you're not empowering them. So emphasize that emotions determine about 90% of our behaviors and decisions. I talk about that in my other books, which were mentioned at the beginning of this talk, like Never Go With Your Gut. Leaders need to focus on the emotions of their people. How do you make sure that your people are in a good mental state for innovation, for creativity, to really have innovation? So the key, effective motivation, is key to leadership, especially in innovation. So asynchronous brainstorming, I can guarantee, will motivate many more of your people than traditional brainstorming. So key takeaways. We're in the key takeaways section now. And again, as you have questions, put them in the comments section. I'll get to them throughout after I get to the key takeaways. The enactment of the 3 A's. Excellence from anywhere. Excellence at any time. And finally, excellence from anyone. Asynchronous brainstorming is the tool, your new design tool, to do so. So you have good customer experience for hybrid and remote teams. I recommend you integrate this into day-to-day operations to get the best user experience outcomes. And I can tell you, those who deploy it most effectively will seize competitive advantage in the future of work, whether you work at a university or at a company, you're an IEEE member, This is what my experience with IEEE members shows. Okay, so again, the resources, final time, tinyurl.com/DAE event, tinyurl.com/DAE event. You don't need you don't need a dash there. So I'll give a complimentary coaching meeting to anyone who wants it, and a copy of my best-selling book, Leading Hybrid and Remote Teams, and a copy of the spreadsheet that we just created together with over 40 ideas from your fellow participants. In fact, I see 45 ideas about how to do this traditional asynchronous brainstorming effectively. Okay, I'll be happy to take any questions at this stage. And the Los Angeles consultant asks to place the DA link in the description. Okay,
Yes, Dr. Gleb.
so Jonathan, please place in the description.
Yes, we've already placed it in the chat function as well as the comment section, folks, for those who have missed it. In case you need it, we can also post it again shortly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gleb. Really great presentation. So, Dr. Gleb, before we go on to our audience questions, I just have a couple of questions of my own that I'd like to ask first.
Yeah.
So you've gone extensively into the benefits of hybrid work and also how the leadership and management can utilize that to its fullest extent. So so my question is my first question, what are some first steps an organization can take to adopt a hybrid work mode, especially for those that have kind of been stuck on the whole in-person workplace culture for so long?
What I strongly recommend organizations do is address the fears around hybrid work. The fears around hybrid work, that's what causes a lot of problems. So one of the fears that universities definitely have, staff at universities, professors, administrators, as well as leaders at tech companies, is that they won't do innovation. They will not be as innovative. Now, we have extensive research showing that virtual asynchronous brainstorming actually produces more innovation, but people aren't used to it. So you need to decrease those fears. You need to show them that, hey, this methodology will actually result in just as many or more ideas. And we saw from the 45 ideas on where you can use it, that's going to be a very good technique. So you want to decrease those fears, decrease the anxiety, and slowly transition as you decrease anxiety. So you want to address their concerns first before transitioning to hybrid and remote work. So that's going to be the first steps.
Great, thank you. And my next question, so I think for the most part, most companies have relied on people being in their seats or in their offices, kind of like metaphorical in a sense, to kind of measure their employees' performances. So how do we measure the performance of remote or hybrid employees, since there's not so much in-person interaction, or even you can't really see them as much physically? Any insight on that?
Definitely. You want to create measurements that will be meaningful for people's performance. What I strongly recommend doing for universities, for example, having a once a month meeting where you establish certain goals that you want to hit over the subsequent month with your supervisor. So the meeting will be with your supervisor. You establish 3 to 5 goals that you want to achieve. And you work over the month to achieve those goals. And then you come in a meeting, you send a report first of how you did on those goals. It's going to be short, a couple of paragraphs, maybe a paragraph on each goal. And then you go to the meeting with the supervisor and you talk about how did you do on those goals? And then how would you evaluate your performance on each of these goals? And then you have that evaluation, which you can put into your performance evaluation process, which is great. Because then you don't do it only once a year.
Mm-hmm.
Very helpful. And then the supervisor can coach you on how to achieve your goals better, on how to perform better in that setting. And then you establish the 3 to 5 goals for the next month. So that's a meeting that takes less than 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very helpful for performance evaluation. And that takes away some other fears of supervisors that, you'll go work remotely and they won't see you for another year, right? So you have those scheduled regular meetings. If you're in a company, I recommend doing it more often, maybe once a week. Many managers already do one-on-ones once a week. So once a week or once every 2 weeks. In a university setting, there's more time and the projects are longer. So I recommend once a month.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, folks, we will move on to our audience questions. Please post your questions for Dr. Gleb in the comment section or the live chat section, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. So, the first question we have, and I think you might have answered it already, but just to kind of recap for our audience who might have missed it. So, our audience member Honorio asks, how would you address the need for potential elaboration of ideas? I mean, if the ideas are submitted asynchronously, how can one ask for an elaboration on an idea?
So what you can do is, if you're doing a second round of step 1 and 2, you'll see what the notes are on an idea, and you can submit fresh versions of that idea that are elaborated. Or if you're not, in the convergence step, if the idea floated to the top as one of the important ideas and got 250 plus points, then you have a number of comments on it, and you can elaborate on the idea in that session.
Great, thank you. And thanks for the question, Honorio. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This next question, Eric asks, I found in-person discussions for problem solving to be much better for achieving a shared mental model of the problem. Any suggestions for remote problem solving as compared to brainstorming?
So that's where, if you want to achieve a shared mental space of the problem, you want to have a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting for a hybrid team. Because before you established a shared mental space, you're going to have difficulty doing virtual asynchronous brainstorming. And virtual meetings are fine for this. So they're less good for idea generation, but for establishing a shared mental space, I've seen virtual meetings work, or in-person meetings. So the in-person meetings are going to be generally better for that context. So in a hybrid context, great, do an in-person meeting. But if you're distributed or you have some people working fully remotely, then have a remote meeting and you'll still get 90% of the benefit.
Great insight, thank you. And thanks for the question, Eric. Kristen asks, do you have an example of ideas?
So what you want to do to rate an idea is make sure that it compares to other idea. So let's say there are 30 ideas. You start out with a baseline rating, kind of from your basic sense of, okay, compared to previous ideas, I heard about this, what my baseline is, how good is this new idea? And then you rate the idea. Let's say you think it's slightly better than the typical idea. So you rate it like a 6 or a 7 on the scale of 1 to 10. Then you go for other ideas. And if you see that idea was actually worse than you thought, you can go back and re-rate it. So make it comparable to other ratings. Because the point is to see which ideas float to the top. So use your baseline sense to start your rating. And then as you continue it, you can go back to the initial ideas and re-rate them.
Great, thank you. Kendall asks, can you share guidance to improve asynchronous brainstorming across geographies and cultures, including North America and Asia, for example?
So what I've seen with some Asian cultures is a reluctance to have their name attached to the idea. And that depends, but that's an average. So in those cases, I would recommend doing semi-anonymous or fully anonymous. Semi-anonymous, again, only the facilitator can see the ideas. So what it would happen is, you saw the spreadsheet before, you saw that some people shared their name, some people didn't share their name. So what you do in that case as the facilitator is you keep the original spreadsheet separately, then you take the column with ideas only, and you share that column with all participants. And so there are no names attached to the ideas, but you know who came up with the idea. So you can give appropriate credit, or you can contact the person if there's need for discussion about something. Or you can make it fully anonymous. where there's no option to put your name, you just put your ideas. So that's what I found is helpful for people from more collectivist cultures.
Right, definitely, because there are people who are a little bit more self-conscious about sharing their ideas, and I guess it kind of goes into this next statement. This isn't necessarily a question, but a statement from one of our audience members, Kevin's. Please note that when team members see comments from other members in an anonymous setting, people's individual grammar can de-anonymize the comments, especially with non-native English speakers. Definitely, I agree with that.
Fair enough.
Thanks for that insight, Kevin. So I think that's it for our audience members' questions so far. Folks, if you come up with one, please send them in. We'll get to them. In the meantime, Dr. Gleb, I have a few more questions that I'd like to ask. So, with remote or hybrid working, I feel like, this is something that I've heard from my own colleagues as well. They kind of get burnt out when they're going through virtual meeting after virtual meeting, just on their computer all day. So, how can we eliminate tech exhaustion when it comes to hybrid or remote working, if that's even possible?
Yeah, so that's funny. One of the quickest innovations that took off at the Information Sciences Institute at the University of Southern California was shortening 30-minute meetings to 25 minutes, shortening hour-long meetings to 50 minutes, and shortening 90 minutes meetings to 75 minutes, and making sure that you start wrapping up 5 minutes before the official end of time. So at 20 minutes, you start wrapping up, or at 45 minutes, you start wrapping up. That 5 minutes is very helpful. It can give you time to use the restroom, meditate. If it's a 10-minute break, you can take a walk around the block, get yourself a sandwich or something. That's very helpful for those mental breaks. So that is one approach that I recommend. Another is to have some meeting-free days. At the Information Sciences Institute, we have meeting-free Wednesdays. So we strongly discourage any meetings on those days. Sometimes you have to when you're working with a program manager,
Right.
and they control your grant, right? Sometimes you have to. But having some meeting-free days, Wednesdays are good meeting-free days because then you have 2 days, you have a meeting-free day, you have 2 days, and then you have a weekend. So that's something to think about, setting those boundaries. So those are both ways of reducing what's called Zoom fatigue, and that's very helpful.
I like that. I really like that. And definitely Wednesday does seem like the ideal time. That first point that you made about cutting it down at least 5 minutes, I really like that. It seems like an obvious kind of like thing to do, but not so much, I suppose. Um, Sometimes people just move on to the next meeting with only a minute to spare.
Yep.
Oh, so so we do have an audience member question. Do people brainstorm with themselves, spread out over hours or days or weeks or months?
Well, when you brainstorm by yourself, you're essentially just writing down ideas over time. So you have an idea bank. And I definitely recommend that. I have an idea bank. That's not brainstorming with yourself. That's brainstorming is usually done with others, but you're just generating ideas. And you can have notes where you have ideas. You can use Google Note or Evernote or something like that, or Keep, and have a list of ideas for various areas, which you can come to and when you have time and to address them. Quite helpful.
Great, thank you. And thanks for the question. Oops, excuse me. This next question, Honorio asks, since some of the value of brainstorming is quantity of ideas, how can we encourage more idea submissions? If there's not time set aside for idea generation, how can we encourage idea submissions?
What I strongly recommend is making that form either fully known to each other so that you get credit for your idea immediately, or at least semi-anonymous so that the leader knows and that you get credit for your idea. So that's important. If you make it fully anonymous, there's somewhat less drive to share ideas and think hard and get more ideas. So that's one. Second is just give more time. I strongly encourage giving more time. I mentioned for that implementation of that huge, that's something like $30 million grant, that was a few days for ideas for how to implement that. And so for various stages of that project, you want a few days to generate ideas. And you can even take weeks, you can take months if you know you have something coming up. So the more time you give, the more helpful it is. And then what you can do also is share ideas, their initial batch. So you share an initial batch. Let's say there are 20 ideas, and you have two more weeks to come up with ideas. You share those 20 ideas with all the participants, and they see the initial ideas, so they can have synergy going because they can have ideas that are sparked by those ideas.
Fantastic, thank you. And Honorio, I hope that answered your question. So folks, oh, why is that still up there? Apologies, let me take that off. So folks, we do have time for 2 more questions. Dr. Gleb, we'll get to these last 2 questions that we have from our audience so far. Um, our audience member asks, in anonymous situations, how do you assure participants that their contributions are valued and are given consideration?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons I recommend the semi-anonymous situation, or if it's fine, then the fully known. An idea for idea generation, not for the evaluation. Evaluation, you want to keep anonymous at all times, but for idea generation, having it semi-anonymous, where only the facilitator/leader knows, or fully known to everyone. That gives credit. So you want to balance these out. The fully anonymous is useful only if you think that some people will be reluctant to share ideas if the leader of the exercise would see them. So that's a trade-off, right? You have to decide what trade-off to make.
Great, thank you. And this last question, for some reason I can't see who sent it in, but our audience member asks, I've heard some folks complain that with remote meetings, they can't see body language. I definitely get that. How do you address that?
What you want to do in remote meetings is actively use emojis, reactions. Zoom has a number of reactions, so does Microsoft Teams, so that you can actually virtually show body language. And you want to use chat. So chat, of course, communicates when other people are speaking. You can express your thoughts, again, using emojis or whatever other things, actual content, saying things, though that's useful. So that is a way to compensate for the body language. Another thing you can do is be more expressive with your face. You've probably noticed that I'm more expressive with my face than most presenters, right? Because I have learned how to do effective virtual presentations that involves more facial expressiveness. I do not look like this in my real life.
Love that. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Gleb. Unfortunately, folks, we are out of time. I think we could probably go on for about this forever. Dr. Gleb, thank you so much for joining us today and providing our audience your insight into improving their own team innovation in a more hybrid and remote work friendly world. Definitely loved
Thank you
having
so much for inviting me.
And thank you to everyone for attending today's live stream webinar. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe to our channels on social media. Check back daily for future live stream updates. Have a great day, everyone.